Good afternoon and welcome to our Community Lunch and Learn series on today, December 9th, 2016. I want to go through a few preliminaries before we get started. If you have questions or are experiencing technical difficulties, there are lots of ways you may reach us. You may reach us via email at unccn@unc.edu. You may call or text us at 919-445-1000. For our Q&A, part of what we'll do is use Poll Everywhere, and that makes it very simple for you to text us a question if you have a phone with texting capabilities, or if you have a computer, you can also get on the web and send us questions that way, and that's via Poll Everywhere. I'll go over how to use that in just a minute. And we always encourage you to check us out on the web at unccn.org. There you'll find links to our upcoming events, to our past events, to our video library with over 185 different lectures available at your fingertips. So lots of information there. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, lots of places you can find us. All right. Mentioning that Poll Everywhere, the easiest way to do that is you start by texting 22333. So that's the number you'll text to, and you'll text the letters UNCCN. You only need to do that once, and then after that you can text in questions or comments. Let me show you what that looks like when it's in action. It'll be up here, so it looks like that. And our opening question is, how do you define hope? And so if you would like to put in just a few words or a sentence or two, how you define hope, you can go ahead and do that right now, again by texting 22333, that number, and then the letters UNCCN are going to be texted to the number 22333. And then after you've done that, it'll say, hey, you've joined the session, and then you can go ahead and text your answer to how do you define hope. The topic today is a very personal one to me, and I'm very glad to have our presenter here today for this. We're battling cancer in my immediate family, and when we began this fight, one of the things we talked about is what does hope mean to us, and that hope plays an extremely important role in our own family. But that it's not a blind hope. We recognize the risks and the risks that are very real associated with that, and I know that our presenter will talk about that today. I actually Googled the phrase "hope is not blind optimism" because that really is what it meant to me. And as I did that, I found a quote that I really appreciated. It said, "Hope is not blind optimism. It's not ignoring the enormity of the task ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. It's not sitting on the sidelines or shirking from a fight. Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite all evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it. Hope is the belief that destiny will not be written for us, but by us." And I thought that was a beautiful quote by President Obama on the topic of hope, and it meant a lot to me.
I'm going to add that to my slides. It's excellent.
Thank you. Patricia Cadle, welcome. We're so glad to have you here today. A quick kind of overview of some of the things that led you to this point. I know you have a bachelor's degree in therapeutic recreation from University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And that was in 1979. So that started you on your educational path. And then a master's degree in 1988 in religious education from Duke Divinity School. What took you from the therapeutic recreation to the degree in divinity?
Well, as I was doing work in recreation, as my profession, I always was involved with the church, doing youth groups, doing Christian education. I had a minister that encouraged me, thought that I should go into the ministry. So took a few years for him to convince me of that, but I applied to Duke Divinity School, and they accepted me, to my surprise, and just kind of started the journey, and felt like I was being called to the ministry in some way, shape, or form. I did do a lot of church work to start out with. Thought that was the way to go, but found that chaplaincy was more my bailiwick. So
And you were also ordained with the United Church of Christ?
that's right.
And that was in 1991. And then in reading, I've noticed the term CPE, or Clinical Pastoral Education Accreditation, in your portfolio. What is that? Because I had not heard of a CPE until I read about that today.
So if you want to become a chaplain, you do have to have a master's degree from a divinity school in divinity. And also you have to go through a program called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education. You do an internship. It's based on the medical model. So you have an internship, and then you go into a residency, and then you're board certified after that. So it's something that gets you to learn what the institution is like, what it is to not be in the church, but provide ministry to a variety of people, because in the church you're dealing with one set of people that have similar beliefs and the way that they look at things, life views, and in the hospital setting, that's different. So you meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and cultures and traditions. So. And
I'm glad to know more about that. And then I understand you were the very first oncology chaplain at UNC in 2001.
Yep, 15 years ago.
Okay.
I can't believe it.
And prior to that, they had not had anyone in that role of oncology chaplain.
I think they had an intern or a resident that changed up every year or so, or every few months. So they wanted someone to be consistent throughout, and I think that's a very important thing to have. Consistency of care, continuity of care throughout. So
absolutely. And then I know that in 2012 you were awarded North Carolina Chaplains Association Chaplain of the Year.
That was very humbling and proud time.
I'll bet. And one of the quotes, and I'm not sure who this is from, but I found associated with that award: "This minister handles very difficult situations with a gentle calmness, keen insight, and deep respect for all beliefs and faiths." And it sounds like there are many that think very highly of you.
I appreciate that.
Without further ado, you're here to discuss, and the topic is spiritual well-being, exploring hope. Yes. So we'll go ahead and turn this. Let's take a look at our poll everywhere and see if we've had anyone.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what people have put down.
A firm belief that something good will happen.
That's a good one.
And if you want to submit anything else, we'll wait just a few more seconds for that.
Okay.
And then throughout the lecture, this will be up. And as you have questions, you can jot those down and send those to us. And then when we get to the end of the lecture, all those questions will show up, as well as additional ones that you have. And Patricia Cadle can explore those with you. So thank you so much.
That'd be great. Let's see if I can figure out how to go ahead.
You've got it.
Just push that little button right there.
Right.
I wanted to start out and take a look at the many ways that we use hope. We use that word in different contexts and for different reasons. And the first one is that it's sometimes a wishy-washy kind of word. It's kind of filled with doubt. Not sure this is going to happen, but I hope so. Like, is your telephone working at home? Well, I hope so. I'm not sure, but maybe it is. That's kind of wishy-washy type hope that we use. We often use hope to sometimes even mean hopelessness. Well, they're in a situation where it just seems like we've done everything we can, and it just seems like it's hopeless. So we may say something like, well, there's nothing left for us to do but just hope. And that might as well be to say we might as well give up because it's hopeless. And sometimes we use the word hope that may not even be worthy of the use of hope. Like, I hope I win the lottery. Or I hope I can get a reservation at the hotel that I'm interested in staying at. I know I've used this one before myself. I hope I can find a parking place. So we use it in those situations as well. But I want to do a little bit deeper and go with my understanding of hope in the situation where people are dealing with hard situations, in difficult circumstances, in unknown places. in uncertain times. And that's the word hope, and meaning certainty, having a strong, confident expectation in something happening. And it may even be a supernatural certainty. If you look at the situation and it doesn't seem to have much hope in it, it may be you may find despair even in the midst of that situation. But the scriptural part of that, or the scriptural meaning of that, is a supernatural certainty based on a belief system or faith. And we can find that in the scriptures and the Christian scriptures. Just a couple of that I pulled up. We have a hope in God. When I get discouraged, He's my Savior and my God. We have His Word. God's Word is my source of hope. And hope is, as we read the scriptures, is encouraging, and as we patiently wait for God's promises to be fulfilled. So that would be the Christian scripture, the use of hope there, that supernatural hope. A more modern idea of hope might come from, I don't know if you've read Groupman before. He's an author from the Anatomy of Hope. He says it's the elevated feeling we experience when we see in the mind's eye a path to a better future, that there's something better to come. There are better days to come. Another one is an intense, cherished desire for certain outcome to occur with the expectation of that fulfillment, even though there's no certainty of that fulfillment. Some of the times we take a look at hope and we may call it optimism. Hope equals optimism is a myth. It's a different way of looking at things. Optimism is based on the reality of seeing something, like the glass half full or the glass half empty would be pessimism. That's something you actually see, and you've decided to look at that in a certain way. But hope does not look at the situation necessarily. It's not based on what you actually see. It's a hope of something for the future, the hope in something that can be better, and not based on what you actually see the situation to be. And hope, this is another myth, hope cannot be had outside of faith tradition. As a chaplain, I'm seeing people often from different faith traditions, and people even without a faith. And people often ask me, well, how do you minister to somebody without a faith? Well, we all have this sense of, this inner sense of hope. That's just a natural human ability. Having a faith tradition gives us something to have faith in, but it's not necessary to have a faith to have hope. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Hope is not a choice. That's another myth. And it is a choice. It is something, I think Barack Obama said, that it is something that you go into, that you have to work at, that you decide to have that sense of a better day, to have a hope in a better day. It's a way of not falling into despair. It's not if you either have it or you don't. It is something you choose to have, something that you can work towards. A myth here, hope is come by easily and takes no effort on your part. Wow. I said it's a spectator sport there as a myth, and I see it as not a spectator sport. It does take effort. Sometimes our situation can be so despairing. It can be so hard, especially with people who find themselves with a cancer diagnosis. That's in your face kind of stuff that is very difficult to handle. It's very difficult to hear, even for the first time. People are just devastated by that kind of news. It's going to take them some effort to get beyond and to process that information, to get beyond a place of despair, to get to a place that, yes, okay, this is the situation. I know it's happening. Now, how do I get to a place that I can move forward in this and even have hope that a new day is coming, that there is a better day coming? Another myth is hope is always present. It cannot fade, and we cannot lose it altogether. It can fade. Somebody can have hope and have faith and just be doing be looking very strong and doing very well, and it can be dashed. It can fade. In the situation with cancer patients, they are getting information all the time. They're getting tests. They're getting results from that test. They're getting doctors coming in and talking to them about treatments. So they can have, this can be this up and down kind of thing. I can have hope after I've gotten the diagnosis, but I hear something else that's, it's not what we thought it was maybe. It's something worse than we thought. Well, that hope could be dashed, and then we have to build that up again. So it can be a kind of a roller coaster, and cancer diagnosis in itself is a roller coaster. So once I've lost hope, I cannot rekindle it. It cannot be reignited. We can never find hope again. And once again, this is a myth that you can find hope again. Even if you've had it and you've lost it, you can find it again. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. There's a Jesuit author, William Lynch, who talks about hope as, and helps us acknowledge this as what I hope for, I do not have, and I cannot see. Again, it goes back to that, not looking at what we have, but believing in something beyond that. What I hope for may be difficult to obtain. And we talked about that myth that it's, it doesn't take any effort, but it does take effort. So it could be difficult to obtain. I can have hope. It is possible for me to hope. That belief that I can have this, that it can be a part of how I get through this, how I cope with my cancer diagnosis. So Lynch is calling us to persevere, to keep going, to never give up. He's inviting us to use our imaginations. And sometimes it does take our imaginations to take a situation that doesn't look very hopeful, it doesn't look very good for us, but use our imaginations of how can we get to that place that does look better. And what would that place look like? How do we envision, we're in a cancer diagnosis, or we're walking with somebody in a cancer diagnosis. How do we envision that new day? How do we image what we want that future to be, that better future to be? So using our imaginations. And he says, when we seem to be stymied by circumstances, there is a fact and a possibility that is not yet in, that there is a way around our troubles, and that the boundaries of the possible are wider than they may seem. So even though we may be discouraged by the circumstances that we see, the possibilities are endless. In our minds, in our imaginations, what we can do, the resources we use, and the boundaries may seem small, but the possibilities are wider than those boundaries are. So don't give up hope. So what does hope do for us? Well, hope brings us strength and comfort and peace, courage and boldness and joy, endurance, resilience, confidence, and faith. That's a lot of stuff. It can do all those things. Hope helps when one is in a difficult circumstance. It helps to see the difficult moments as less difficult and easier to bear. It gives a perspective on the struggles in life. Hope allows us to increase our belief in a world where good things can happen, that things can get better, that no matter how bad the situation, good things can come from this. Hope helps us persevere when things are not going as planned. help us get through the trials and tribulations that life brings. So our best laid plans are often taken out of our hands, or we're given some other situation that we hadn't planned for. But it helps us when we get to those places that we can persevere, that we can go forward, and we can bear the trials and tribulations that are put on our plate. Hope invites the individual on a journey, gives strength and focus to start working toward goals. It's a new journey when someone enters that cancer journey with hearing the word, you have cancer. This is a new journey, a scary journey, but it is full of opportunities. It gives opportunities for going and developing what is it, now that I have this, what is it that I want? Where am I going? What are my goals? And it helps us to give us strength and focus on that to keep going forward. Hope has a tendency of lifting us out of depression, out of that despair, thinking that there can be something better. So after we hear a lot of sad stories, the stories that break our hearts, and with caregivers, we may be seeing our loved one having a very difficult time. We may feel depressed in our own way as a caregiver taking care of a patient. But it has a tendency to have hope can lift us out of that despair. It changes one's outlook on the future. I think the first thing everybody says when, if that cancer diagnosis is given, the first thing a lot of people, and I've asked participants like yourselves, what is it that as soon as you hear the word cancer and you have cancer, what is the first thing that you think of? And a lot of the times, most of the time, it's death or it's suffering. And this gives us having hope gives us a new outlook on that is not the end of our being, of our existence to get that cancer diagnosis. It can help us to transform the situation. It can help us to develop a plan of action, and it can give us a new reality, a new vision of reality. So hope helps us believe that we are able to create self-fulfilling prophecies. And this is a way that we can set ourselves up for greatness. We're paving a way towards something that's positive and good for ourselves. It may be finding strength that we don't know about. It may be having people around us and finding new people in our path and in our lives that can help us find the way and pave that path to more positiveness and goodness for ourselves. And it brings like-minded people together. Having a hope of a certain outcome puts us, like-minded. We want to go forward. We want to have this happen. We put our energies towards it. So it brings like-minded people together to bring that hope and that vision to fruition. And hope has a tendency to inspire others. People that see cancer patients that are persevering and that are taking on the task, and they're going forward, and they're keeping hope alive. That inspires us. It inspires me as a caregiver, as a professional caregiver, and as a personal caregiver. So it can inspire us. Dr. Lopez, he is a leading researcher in hope, has said this: hope is more dynamic concept than just wishful thinking. It is the ability to imagine a future goal and understand the steps necessary to accomplish it. Hope not only changes one's outlook on the future, but also helps to shape it. And he says, I love this, hope is like oxygen. We can't live without hope. It's hard to go forward, or if we are in the mire of all the difficulties and all the despair. It's hard to go forward when we're mired down like that. We need that sense of something better, something coming that's worthwhile and worth living for. When we're excited about what's next, we invest more in our daily life and we can see beyond current challenges. We get excited about what's next, even though we're in this hard place. And we can figure out what we need to do daily to make that come to fruition, to make that a reality. According to Lopez, as I said, he did some research. Only half of us measure high in hope. Yikes. That's 50-50, folks. And we got to learn how to use that hope in every situation. I hope that during this situation or this time that you can find ways and that you will discover a way, if you are not high with hope right now, that I can give you some ways of kind of working through that. And that's what we're going to talk about with Dr. Lopez's core beliefs. Again, if you are not high in hope right now, fortunately, he says, hope can be learned. It can be learned. We may not know how to do it right now. You may not know how to, proceed and go forward and find that new day, but you can learn how to hope. And he talks about 4 core beliefs. And one of the beliefs is the future. This is where you start your foundation. The future will be better than the present. Believing that. Having that being a part of your being. Become part of your being. That the future will be better than the present and the hard time that I find myself in at this very moment. And I have the power to make it so. I am able to make a plan, to pick out goals, to use my strengths, to be able to take action. And there's many paths to that goal. There's not just one way of doing this. You may do it different than someone else, reaching for that same goal. But there are many paths to that goal. It's almost like you can't do it wrong. There's a lot of right ways of doing it. And none of them, of all those paths, are free of obstacles. So we've got to know that along the way, we talked about it already, there's that, I've got hope now, but I hit something, I hit the wall, and it's less now. I don't have the hope that I had, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep persevering, and I'm going to keep going forward and get over those obstacles. So never letting down, never giving up, always moving forward. So what about hope in healthcare? What does hope do for people that find themselves in the healthcare system? Well, this is based on research that hope has been found to help people heal faster and heal easier. Individuals who maintain hope, especially battling illness, significantly enhance their chances of recovery. These are important things that sometimes if we miss this and we miss, having that hope and reaching out and giving people hope or encouraging them to have hope, they miss out on these outcomes. So when healthcare providers recognize the importance of hope in the recovery process, they can instill hope in their patients, enabling them to develop healthy coping strategies and therefore improve their physical and emotional well-being. So when doctors and nurses and the medical team know the importance of hope and encourage that sense of hope in people that are in the recovery process, it improves the physical and emotional and I would say spiritual well-being. Hope has strong psychological benefits, and it helps people cope more effectively with their disease. It's a coping mechanism. It helps them from getting stuck. It helps them moving forward. It helps them to have a vision of the future, more a better vision of than where they are. It motivates people to pursue healthy behavior for recovery. Things like, if I have hope, then I'm going to do everything I can to make this happen. So if I want to get stronger in the midst of cancer, then I know that I need to eat right, I need to sleep, I need to exercise, I need to lessen my stress. All those things, all those resources, all those, the knowledge that we have to be better, to be healthier, these are things that I will be confident in and want to participate in to help in my recovery. I know we talk about it at UNC a lot, that we want the patients to be involved in their care. Well, this is a huge way that they can be involved in their care, doing all these things, helping them have the hope for a better day. So patients who maintain high levels of hope have improved prognosis for life-threatening illness and enhanced quality of life. That enhanced quality of life, again, is another thing as a chaplain that I encourage people to really focus on and think about when they're deciding on treatments and they're deciding on, what the next steps are or where they might go for care. The quality of their life is so important. We want them to have a good quality of life in the midst of all the treatments and all the care that they receive. So it provides them an improved prognosis and enhanced quality of life. Belief and expectation, which are key elements of hope, actually block the pain in patients suffering from chronic illnesses by releasing endorphins and mimicking the effects of morphine. I find that very interesting and very hopeful. That being positive and being hopeful and looking for, ways to be involved in my care, if I am a patient, that empowers me to be actively involved. That empowers me to choose things which will move me forward, which will give me a better outcome, a better physical outcome, even. So oftentimes we think of hope maybe on one level, but there's so many levels that a cancer patient and people with illness might find themselves in. It changes from day to day, as I've said before. You get the diagnosis, then you have to take some more tests, and then you have, you do the treatments. Do the treatments work or not? When you get to a place, it may get to a place of you're actively involved in seeking cure for a while, and then it becomes to a place we have no more treatments for you, and it moves to a place of care. We call it comfort care in the healthcare profession. So we have to take a look at does hope change throughout the process, throughout the continuum of an illness? And yes, I believe it does change as they go through different things. They hope for different things. When they're looking for a cure, they're hoping that the treatments work. They're hoping for a good outcome, a good physical outcome. When they're hoping for care, that hope changes, it shifts and goes to, I hope that I don't suffer. I hope that my people that I love will be around me. So there's a different, the hope, the outcome of hope changes. And what does that look like? What does good and better life look like in this situation? So when we're challenging or changing the face of hope, and we're looking as healthcare providers, it's really important that we present realistic odds, that we do avoid false hope. This is mostly for docs and nurses and folks that are giving the information, that their diagnosis. One way of saying this situation here, or what's happening, what's their outcomes. You have a good chance at surviving this, which makes the treatment worthwhile. Instead of saying only 25% of the people survive after 5 years from the onset, regardless of treatment. There's a difference there. That's perceived differently. Those words are perceived differently by someone receiving them. Another example would be, with new drugs now available, the tumor can shrink and you can go into long-term remission, living a productive life. Instead of saying, we cannot cure it, we can only shrink it temporarily, it will grow back, and eventually our drugs won't work anymore. Do you see the difference there? You know, you're offering hope, you know, and you're not taking away their power to be a part of that, the life, that productive life that we want them to have. So there's a way of saying and giving diagnoses and what is coming next. Okay. So one of the dangers of false hopes, it denies the patient the opportunity to evaluate options, plan, and problem solve, and engage for the search for meaning. So if we give false hope, we say, you do this, and you know, there's a 25% chance that this is going to help you, then you know, we might take away, or maybe even there's a 5% chance that this is going to help. It almost gives them that false sense of security, and lots of people will grasp on to the smallest amount of percentage or hope that is given to them by the medical team. So if we know that we're moving from care or cure to care, it's important to watch out how we present the limited amount of treatment we have, or the limited effect of that treatment, because some people may grasp onto that, just the smallest carrot that we put out there, and we deny them the opportunity to take care of themselves and their situation as it really is, to prepare all the things that they need to get together financially, they're taking care of their family, all those things they need to take care of. We deny them the opportunity to do that. If they give that false hope, then we just keep on and keep on without saying, you know, we want you to go and live a productive and a fulfilling life with those that love you. And by giving false hope, we're being dishonest. It violates a trust. And in the medical field, in that doctor-patient relationship, trust is so important. People need to be able to trust that you are going to tell them, you know, real stuff, true stuff, real facts. And the patient suffers from doubt and could suffer from doubt and isolation because they're feeling like that nobody's going to listen to their concerns. People have a way of knowing that this isn't good. You know, I'm not sure. You know, what I'm hearing from the doc, it doesn't kind of fit with, you know, where I am. I've had people tell me, you know, I had a sense that I was going to die before the doctors even told me I was going to die. So if they can't trust that medical team is going to listen and provide honest feedback and honest treatment plans so that people can find meaning, then they're probably going to hold that back. They're not going to share that with anyone. So they hold that concerns in. A stiff upper lip. Our culture seems to be, you know, just meet it, beat it, you're good, kind of thing. And that may kind of let our anxiety down as caregivers, as medical personnel, that, you know, okay, we're going to beat this thing, we're going to go forward, we're going to, you know, but it may raise the anxiety of the patient if we're telling them just be tough, just be strong, just pray enough, just say the right words. You know, that can raise the caregiver's anxiety. And Tim and I talked about that right beforehand. It's like, you know, saying to the person, if you don't do it right, you know, you may not get through this. And so putting them in a hard situation, to say, that you didn't pray right, so that's why you're dying, or that's why the treatment isn't working. So we're putting a lot of stress on them, right? So, again, doing that stiff upper lip. Are they going to talk to you about death? Are they going to talk about their fears? Probably not. If all we're doing is, go get it, do it. Be strong. So be careful of that. So when cure is not possible, where's the hope? So this is where the care comes in. This is the hope that people who that find themselves in comfort care situations, this is their hope. To be free of pain, to not suffer, to be comfortable, to have time with loved ones, to understand and receive comfort from those around them, to have that ability to cope, have the coping mechanisms they need in place, to maybe have reconciliation with someone in their family, maybe reconciliation with God, reconciliation with themselves sometimes. When guilt comes in, sometimes they're beating up on themselves, and there's this distaste for themselves, so that may be reconciliation on many levels. They can find the hope is to find a meaningful existence. Maybe even, hitting some of those things on the bucket list, reaching their goals, having a goal and reaching it. Maybe you have to adapt the goal for that to be possible, but having that meaningful existence. And I'd like to think that they have abundant life all the days of their lives. And, of course, the thought of an afterlife, that hope of an afterlife, if there's that sense in their religious tradition and their understanding of that. So how do we provide an environment for hope? How do caregivers, personal and professional, provide an environment for hope? We need to take care of our own anxiety first. We need to talk to others and kind of get a grasp on how we're feeling about the situation, what we're doing. Do I have the coping skills? Do I have the belief that's going to uphold me in this situation? Taking care of the self first. I always think of the airplane situation where the oxygen mask comes down, and what do you grab? Who do you put that oxygen mask on first? You put it on yourself so you can help others. So you've got to help yourself first and make sure you know where you're coming from and you've dealt with your concerns and your fears about the situation, and examining your own beliefs and take ownership of those beliefs or those thoughts. You want to create an environment of trust and availability. There's that word again, trust. And being available to that person, being willing to sit down eye to eye, toe to toe, and let them just tell you all the things that they're concerned about and what's on their minds. And answering and being honest, but with tact. Provide cure hope when appropriate. If there is a good chance, yes, we want to have, provide that hope when it's appropriate. Shift your role from cheerleader of cure to facilitator of searching for meaning. And I often talk to doctors and nurses saying, your job isn't done when the physical being is not saved, or the medication isn't working, or you have to send them home with hospice. Our job is not done at that point. We've got to shift with the shift of hope that person can have. We want to encourage them and empower them to find meaning in the rest of their lives. We want to help them do that and encourage them to do that. Again, the quality of life, how important that is when it's comfort. We want to encourage the fulfillment of unrealized desires. That's that goals, that bucket list maybe. How can we help them do that, or encourage them to do that? And sometimes we have to allow some hard discussions to happen. We have to allow them, if they are leading us, to talk about death, to talk about their fear, their deepest fears, because we don't want them to be isolated, and we don't want them to avoid these questions and these dilemmas. We want them to have a safe place to explore them and find answers for themselves. So guiding people and helping them to find meaning. You can have some good open-ended questions in your back pocket. Tell me about your life and what you perceive as their major accomplishments. Ask them about their life. Ask them about their fears. Ask them about what's the most important relationship they've had. Let them talk about their life. Let them talk about their beliefs. What is your belief, and how is it important to you at this moment, and how do you use it to get through? So having some good open-ended questions, and that provides that safe container, that safe place, and allows them to know you're interested, and that there's things to talk about and that you would like to know. And be present as much as possible, sitting face to face with the person, holding hands if appropriate, and being attentive and a good listener. I guess one of the questions my nurses have asked me several times, what do I say when they want to talk about death? What's the right words to say? Well, oftentimes it's just being present, just being in that place, listening. You don't have to have all the right words. You don't have to have all the right answers. So we're getting close to the 10-minute time. So just the final words about hope. So we know now that hope's not always present, and that's okay. We've got to go through the sadness. We've got to let them be in places. Patients often are in a place of anger, of guilt, of sadness, and we've got to let people be there and allow them and help them to develop that sense of hope and encourage that. Hope can fade, and we can lose it altogether, but we can always find it again. And hope can be reignited just simply by hearing a child's laughter or the gentle embrace of a friend. We do a lot of hugging up on the cancer floors. We do a lot of hugging. And it's just an encouragement and to say, you're not alone. There is hope. There is a better day. We'll help you find it. Help you find it.
Patricia, thank you so much. This has been extremely meaningful, and I'm sure that our audience has found it as well. I want to go ahead and did you want to say anything about this last quote?
Oh yeah, let's see. I like this one too. Where there was no human reason for hope, there she was.
Thank you.
Kind of puts it all together.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope continues to bloom.
We'll go past that. And you might want to take some time for yourself, as I said, to kind of know yourself, get through your own anxieties and things, but also know where your hope lies. What do you hope for? And how do you think, or what steps do you think you could have to make that hope come alive? And you might want to share it with one other person just to make it real, to put it out there into the universe. We too, each and every one of us, no matter where we find ourselves, our situations change daily. We find ourselves in hard places. We've got to have that ability to have and to find hope. So you might want to just spend some time doing that. What is your hope for the future?
All right. Well, let's take a look. Let me remind our audience that you can email us questions at unccn@unc.edu. You can call or text those questions in at 919-445-1000, or maybe the easiest thing to do is to text UNCCN to the number 22333, and once you've done that once, you can go ahead and text we'll receive those questions as you text those in. We'll see if we have any, and they should show up. We haven't had any show up yet. We're also going to unmute our audience, and our AV engineer will go ahead and do that now. Max, if you go ahead and unmute our different audience members. A quick reminder, when we do this, please, if you can remain very quiet in the room, that way we can hear all the different questions that come in. While we're doing that, I'll ask one to get us started. Okay. In terms of the if we look at the various elements of treatment, and maybe somebody receives many weeks of chemo, perhaps then surgery, perhaps then radiation after that, are there any sort of normal ups and downs that we might expect to see in terms of one's feelings of hope or despair through that process, and where you might get to a point where the clinician might notice, yep, that person is experiencing what a lot of people experience at this phase of treatment? Right.
I think each time a new information comes, and it may not be good information, it may be very discouraging, it may be difficult to hear for the family or for the patients. I think those are highlights. I think those are places where you're going to feel, man, I thought I was doing well. It seemed like the treatment was working. Now they've come back and said, this isn't. We're going to have to try something else. That can be a time of, just a letdown. So that would certainly be a place that, okay, this is where we're going to try to build up their hope and invite them into that, right? We want to give them, and the way we explain that to them, this is a treatment that we've used in the past. It's been successful. We think this will give you good quality of life. Using those words in there that give them hope, a good quality of life, a good future, making reaching your goals, being with friends, families, and loved ones. This is going to give you time to do that.
Resetting that focus, whether that's for you as the patient or whether that's somebody who's supporting the patient.
Yes.
All right, questions. I see several sites, and you should all be unmuted at this point. Go ahead, and if you've got a question, just go ahead and ask that to Patricia now, please. Any questions? I see Patient Family Resource Center and Outer Banks and McCreary, so we'd love to hear your questions. Here's one that just came in through Poll Everywhere. Please don't forget that hope can and has been fulfilled for many cancer patients. Many have experienced cures, even those with potentially poor diagnosis.
Absolutely. I often focus on the worst of the worst because those are the people that I see most often. But you are right. There are many people, and the treatment can be a hope. That absolutely gives people hope that there is something that can be done, and that people do experience a complete remission of cancer, and they go on and live many years. I would be careful. One thing that popped in my head when I was saying that was oftentimes medical folks give a timeline. We don't have anything else for you. You've got 2 weeks to live. I would caution people not to do that, because I have had many patients in the same vein that said, that's what I got. But look at me now. I'm 10 years out. Right. So I think it's something that goes along with that we don't have the answers to how long life is going to be.
We have a comment, being hopeful is a choice we make.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you can choose. It's kind of like being happy, right? We choose to be happy. We find a way to do it. We choose to be hopeful. We find a way to do it. What are the resources? What's the pathway? What's my goal?
Right. Poor diagnosis at 6 months. I've personally seen patients live 15 or more quality years longer than what was considered possible in this past decade. in the past decade of treating cancer patients. Even stage 4 breast cancer patients can survive currently for up to 3 decades due to new therapies.
Some of these statements can be hopeful, right? We've seen improved treatments, less toxicity. We've seen new ways of tagging that cancer cell so the treatment goes right to that cancer cell. You know, there's different ways that people are now coming out with. So even if somebody gets a bad diagnosis and a poor prognosis, 3 years down the road, there may be something brand new.
Right.
So there is hope in the medical system. I don't want to say that there isn't. There is that hope that it gives to people.
Absolutely. And I can say, from my experience interviewing and speaking with so many different researchers, it's phenomenal the amount of research, the amount of new treatments and different treatments that are coming out.
So that's hopeful.
Absolutely.
That's hopeful.
Planning for the worst, hoping for the best, and accepting what plays out.
Yep. Yep, planning for the worst. And we've got to look at reality. Sometimes we're given the worst information, the worst diagnosis, but it doesn't preclude that we can hope for something better. Right?
We have time for maybe one more question. If you'd like to share one, just go ahead and speak up from our audience and let us know a question or a comment you have for Patricia.
We have some wisdom out there that you all are sharing. Thank you.
All right. If we don't have any other questions, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to be with us today. This has been recorded and will be available later today, and you can find that at unccn.org in our video lecture library. So if you enjoyed this, please feel free to share the link to that with anyone who you think would also benefit from this lecture. Invite friends and colleagues to future lectures. Our next Lunch and Learn lecture will be on January 27th of 2017 at noon, and that's Clinical Trials 101. So this is Clinical Trials Basics with Kim Keller, and she's from the Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. She'll be with us next month, so we'll look forward to that and hope you can join us for that. We want to thank the University Cancer Research Fund and the generous funding from the North Carolina General Assembly to make this all possible. We want to thank the UNC Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. I want to specifically call out Mary King, our operational coordinator, Max Gaynor, our AV support engineer, and Alan Brown, our continuing education specialist. They make this all possible and put a lot of hard work into each and every one of these events. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. And
Thanks,
Patricia Cadle, thank you so much for being with us today. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.